We are going to start this webinar in just a few seconds. Here we go. The Virtual Business Recovery Center welcomes you to our today's webinar. We have a wonderful remote work webinar for you. The Virtual Business Recovery Center is a joint project of the St. Lucie County Economic Development Council, the Florida Small Business Development Center, and Indian River State College, and the Corporate and Community Training Institute. We're here to provide local companies with the resources to thrive in a new economy with new ways of doing business. We provide proactive recovery for local regional businesses, webinars with subject matter experts on various topics to guide owners in rebuilding their businesses, business assistance counselors to provide advice on specific issues. On that topic, there's several counselors monitoring the chat room, so we encourage you to use the chat room. This is meant to be a dialogue today, so we do have experts here for you able to assist on both the IT front and on the general business front. So please ask your questions in the chat room. We're also building out expert advisory networks to assist your business. Please feel free to reach out to the SBDC for no-cost business consulting at irscbiz.com, or you may call them at 772-336-6285. We'd also like to thank, we are in the beautiful 8th Avenue studios here in Port St. Lucie. Thank you very much for this production opportunity. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted at youredc.com/VBRC. So with that, I would like to introduce our presenters today. So we have one of them here in the studio with us, and another is, we need to get Kenny live up there, but Kenny Crawford with Pax8 is joining us virtually. Here in the studio is Mike Borlaug with Capstone IT. So I am going to hand this over to Mike to tell us how to work remotely and improve our teams.
All right, sounds good. So thank you to the Virtual Business Recovery Center for having us. We're going to talk a bit about remote tools and how you can better utilize that in your business. And we'll kind of go through the ins and outs of that. And of course, if you have any questions, please put those in the chat. And then at the end, we'll have we left a long time for the Q&A because I keep getting the feedback every time I do this. The Q&A is some of the best time that people get to learn the most. So we'll do that. So the next slide here has the next one is has a quote here from one of my mentors, a gentleman I respect a lot, John Maxwell here, and you can read it just as well as I can, so I won't read it for you. But the one thing that I thought was very applicable is, we must link up with others. And that's really what this is about is, yes, we're in the middle of, or hopefully it's ending here soon, a pandemic here, but this is going to kind of be the norm now is remote work. And so how do you get people who are not physically sitting next to you to collaborate, have those water cooler discussions? And so we'll talk about some things you probably already have in place and just not taking advantage of. So quickly, here's the agenda here. So we're going to do my friend Kenny here is going to be doing a demo with Teams. Teams is one of those things that not a lot of people are utilizing right now. It has a lot of good features, very feature rich. So as you're learning about what it can do, I encourage you to think about, yes, this is really cool, but how can I utilize in that business? So this is one of the ones you're probably not going to know much about, and that's why we invited Kenny from Pax8. The next part, we'll go through the Office, or now Microsoft 365, some of the platform tools that are built into there. And then we'll talk a little bit about cloud computing, servers in the cloud. That may or may not be something that you know much about or even be interested in. So, because we only have an hour, we're going to do a brief overview of all these to ensure that we're getting you enough information to either pique your interest and have additional questions, or say that sounds really cool, but may not be quite for me yet. And then of course, at the very end, as I said earlier, we'll do a Q&A. So please get your questions in, and we encourage you to do that because you're going to have a lot of questions. We're not doing any deep dives. We could easily make this 4 hours and put a lot of people to sleep. We'd like to not to do that. So we'll use that time to do that. I thought this was a really good picture here. This is kind of what we're all dealing with right now in the COVID-19 era. And I know that we're starting to move away from COVID-19 and the effects of it. People are starting to get back into the offices. Businesses are starting to hire again. The recovery is starting to happen now. But I think there's two major things why this is still going to be relevant for many years to come. The first is people have gotten a good taste of what it's like to work from home. So when somebody has a sick child, they're going to now have the expectation, I'm going to work from home today and not have to take a sick day or a personal day to be able to take care of them. So that's no longer going to be something that businesses get to offer. People are going to expect that. The next level is, again, people have been working from home for months. So they're going to start thinking, why can't I work from home a couple of days a week? I'm more productive. There's study after study showing how much more productive people can be at home. So not only are they going to have the expectation, why can't I work from home, and ask those questions, but it's also on the business side, owners saying, how can I take advantage of this? How can I use this as a benefit in my company? And then, of course, that next tier is people have worked from home, and I'm just going to work from home. I'm no longer going to go in the office. Maybe I'll fly into corporate office once in a while, but I want to strictly work from home. I did that for 6 years, pluses and minuses, both ways. But it was something that I did, and that's going to be a big part of what we're going to be dealing with. The second piece is access to talent. Talent pools are not dispersed amongst the United States or in the state of Florida or in this particular area. There are pockets of talent across different geographic areas. And if you can build a remote tools type setup in your business or organization, you no longer have to hire just from someone down the road, but you can take advantage of somebody. All the big tech startup companies, they always go to Silicon Valley. Why? The best talent's there. So now if you can go build a business for, instead of paying $1,000 a square foot, you're paying, $20 a square foot, but you can have access to that talent in Silicon Valley, that's a big business that can really make a competitive advantage. And so, and also on the flip side is I no longer have to move to Silicon Valley and pay $1 million for a 1-bedroom house. I can live in the mountains of Utah and have a job that pays really well. So we're going to start seeing that. And that's why I have that kind of slide up there. So, so we're going to dive into here now into the actual tools themselves. We all have our normal inline business applications, as I call them, industry specific ones too, of QuickBooks and whatever you do to run your business. But many businesses and organizations already have Office 365. Most are only using it for email or maybe your office licensing. So what we're going to talk about is these tools within the platform you're probably already paying for and not taking advantage of it. So we're going to teach you how to take advantage of that and see in a higher level to see if that's something that you can take advantage of. So on that note, introduce you to Kenny. Kenny is from Pax8, and he is a Office, now Microsoft 365 expert, and deals with this day in and day out. So he knows Teams better than most people across the United States. So I want to turn it over to Kenny, and Kenny, take it away.
Yes, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. Sorry, but I'm not able to share my screen.
Do you have enable screen sharing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's. Where is that? Should I make co-host?
You could certainly do it then.
Try that now, Kenny.
Perfect. All right, thank you for that. All right, so yes, as Mike mentioned, I'm Kenny Crawford, productivity specialist at Pax8. My specialty number one is Microsoft, and we've been doing a lot of that, a lot of great things, like Mike said, with the working from home. So a lot of great stuff coming our way, and definitely want to dive into some great features of Teams and how you can utilize it more. So we have here, pro tips for getting the most out of Microsoft Teams. Now, at Pax8, we believe that these 3 C's of Teams are really going to be really highly important. Obviously, most people think that Teams is just a chat tool or maybe a call tool when it does so much more. So within chat, you have your direct messaging, group chats, you can group or rename chats, saving messages, sharing messages to Outlook, and then pin chats. Also, collaborate is going to be a huge piece within Teams. Team sites, different channels you can create, conversation, announcements, file sharing. You can see this document repository. It has all these great features, and then obviously calling, where you guys can call now, schedule meetings, auto converse with Bridge, live events, etc. So Teams is a great tool. So what I want to dive into here, first thing is obviously on the far left where you have your activity, your chat, your Teams, calendar, call, and files. Now you can drag those up and down and rearrange them how you truly like to manage your teams. It's all customizable, so feel free to do that. Obviously, I have, for example, my chat is at the very top because I chat all day, every day with all my coworkers in different departments to get things done. So just wanted to briefly touch on that. So we're going to dive in here and talk about, first off, your status, your availability throughout the day through Teams. So what this is going to show is that Megan here is going to be available. Obviously, she has her different categories to change that. But what's real great in here is that you could set a status message. And what that's going to do for you is it's going to alert people that are trying to message you or Teams you and let them know what's going on. So, for example, if you had a 2-hour training today, or if you're in a webinar, for example, you can go down here to custom message and choose the date and then click that little check mark. And you can say, in a 2-hour webinar, please reach out to XYZ for more help. What that does is just gives people more room for they're not just trying to reach out to you, not getting the answers, and they can be more productive and see what's going on. Next, we have a feed here or filters. Now what you can do in here is you can type a specific filter, or you can go to this more actions 3 dots here and use a filter of variety of different categories. So in this instant, we're going to use unread messages within the whole Teams platform, and it's going to pull up all your unread messages here for you. If you get behind on your Teams or your activities, the different channels on the left, this is a quick way to fix that. Now, to move into the chat, there's a lot of good things here. We can add groups. I'm going to show you how to pin your more important colleagues, if you will. And so for a group or a tag, you simply just choose the people that you were speaking with, click the pencil that's highlighted there, and you can name this group whatever is appropriate. So for this instant, marketing project group. Go ahead and save it, and you can see it change right up there at the top. And those 3 individuals are in that specific group there. From there, you can go back to the more actions tab, and then you can pin them. And you can see that moved them automatically to the top of your chat session. So another great example is I work with 4 different account managers here at Pax8, and I have all 4 of them, plus my manager, pinned because I talk to them more than anybody else. So it's a great way to find the people you're working with instead of scrolling up and down trying to find them. Also, you can, within the chat, you can go to the bottom there and see that pay-per-click, which is an attachment. You can upload from your computer or a OneDrive. In this case, we'll do OneDrive. Select the document you like, and then share it. And it will go into that in there, and then send, and it will go into your chat session. A couple great things about doing this is you can go to the more options, and you can share to Outlook. So you could send an email directly from here. No need to get out and go to your Outlook. You can send it directly from here. Pulls up a nice little email for you. Go ahead and select the people you'd like to send to. In this case, they're sending it to the finance team. Put a little message. You can encrypt it still as well, which I think is an awesome feature, especially if you have vital information. And then it gets encrypted, as you can see, and then it's sent. Awesome way to send email, send files without having to hop back and forth. Another awesome feature is back to the more options. You can do an edit in Teams. So that document pops up here. You do edit. You can pull up your conversation from your team. If you have a message for them, you can simply put it there, as you can see. Now, what's real cool is there's this editor button. Now, you go ahead and click on that. It's going to pull up a little panel and tell you if this document is correct. As you can see, it's almost there, but there's one spelling error. and we can see that on the left, it's underlined. So click the spelling error. It's going to automatically update with the possible corrections. Choose the correction, and it's automatically fixed for you within Teams. No need to open up Word. Nothing else, done here completely in Teams. The document is ready to go, and you can just move right on like nothing ever happened. You also can hit this plus button within this group, and you can add tons of different apps. In this case, we're going to use OneNote. Go ahead and create a new notebook and label it whatever you would like. In this case, it's going to be sales collaboration. Go ahead and save that. Takes a second, and then it's going to pop up right here at the top. Now you can use that to share notes, share other documents, a lot of great things to use, and it's highly unutilized. All right, so next we're going to talk about creating some tags. Now this is in actually the Teams icon on the left there. So this is a place where different departments within a company can set up different team channels for maybe different information, different marketing campaigns, etc. But it's really great. So you can choose the channel you'd like, go to the more options, choose the manage tags, create tag. You want to name the tag. In this case, they're using sales, and then they're going to add the individuals they'd like to tag for this specific channel. So Isaiah, Megan, Lynn. These are the 3 individuals that they're going to use. It even shows them right there. And you just close out of that tab. And then what's great is you can come down into the conversation, use the @ symbol, and if you type in sales, you can see it pops up there from that specific tag, and then type your message, and it goes to those 3 specific individuals within that channel, which I think is a really cool piece. Some things you don't want everybody to see, so creating a tag like that is a great way to get your information out, but not everybody has to see it. Moving along here, there's some also, besides that @ symbol, there's more commands and shortcuts. In this instance, we're going to use, so always / and then saved, and that's going to pull up any messages that were saved, anything that you saved within your Teams. Another great one is / unread, kind of like we saw earlier. It's going to pull up all your unread messages. Some really good ones. Go to. You can choose to go to a specific channel to see what's going on within there. You also can just click on it on the left there, but it's just a quick way to do that. / mention. So if you're talking about a specific individual, easy way to find that conversation or that praise maybe they gave them. What's new is a cool one. So this is kind of like an update. You know, you can go / what's new, and here's an update from April about Teams having an end meeting button added to it. So just some quick little new info. Also, you can do help. That's just going to give you kind of like a learning portal here of maybe finding some new things within Teams. To kind of go along here, couple newer features that we have launched here over the last couple of months are going to be the translator and the immersive reader. These are pretty cool. So you can go to whatever article you want to take a look at, hit the more options, turn on immersive reader, and it's going to put it out for you. And now you can play it automatically, or you can go through some different options with text size, spacing, colors, whatever that employee would need to get this message read to them. You can even look at the speed, how fast the machine is talking, female, male, you know, there's the text size, the different colors, very customizable. As you can see, just all the different words can be categorized. It's really great. And what it does is that you hit that play button after you have it completed the way you'd like, and it will read it to you. So it's a great extra tool. And then to kind of go here, to kind of finish up, go ahead and choose whatever maybe word that isn't spelled in a language you can't read. You can click that more options and hit translate, and it will correct the wording for you so you're able to read that. Haven't used that one too much, but it's a great little extra tool to use within Teams. Everybody likes to work differently. So that's actually my part of the presentation right now. I'll send it back over to Mike.
All right, thank you. That was, and again, there's a lot of little features in there, and I'm sure that you probably forget half of them by the time this is done, but it's really to get introduced to more, see those and understand what they are, what they can do. And if you'd like to learn more, of course, there's the Q&A. We can talk more about that offline.
Mind if I interject a question for Kenny right now?
Please.
Maybe we can get kind of the chat started a little bit. Kenny, I'm very curious. So a lot of the work we do at the VBRC and elsewhere is internal and external teams, right? So it seemed like what you were really going over there was an internal working team. Can we and how do you share that with external teams?
So are you referring to maybe sending some emails to external, or are you looking just to
emails, but calendars, working on a project, right? So if you have people within, I'm thinking of people that are in sales, right? So you have something, you're working on a sales design type project, and you're having to create that product with your customer. It seems like Teams is kind of an ideal environment for that, to be doing that kind of work in.
Yeah, I haven't had the privilege to learn that quite yet. I apologize. It's definitely some information.
Kenny, do you want me to jump in here and answer this question? And hey, everybody, I'm sorry, I'm just now joining. My name is Zach. I'm a solutions engineer over here at Pax8. Works with Teams quite a bit. And I think I could answer these questions for you if that's okay.
Please.
Okay. So cool. So it actually requires a little bit of administrative work up front, but yes, and I'm sorry I didn't get either of your gentlemen's names, but I'll just answer the question first, and then we can jump back to the pleasantries. So you actually will need to, let's say you're having what's called a guest. That's how Microsoft labels them. You consistently have a guest that you're trying to collaborate with, whether that be in an internal Teams channel, whether that be document or file sharing, so on, so forth. There actually is an administrative process to adding these specific users into your tenant's Active Directory. So actually it's not like I suddenly start doing a lot of work with you and me as a user can just add you into my Teams. This does require some security administrative abilities in order to add. But then once, for example, I add Kenny as a trusted guest, that's really what it comes down to. In my Active Directory, he's going to have the ability to be assigned certain teams. And within those teams, just like Kenny went over, you'll have not only chatting capabilities, file sharing capabilities, and actually, guys, it all ends up defaulting back to your company's SharePoint permissions. Teams is inevitably hosted all in SharePoint, just like OneDrive is, and obviously just like SharePoint itself is. So when you're actually doing this sharing with guest, it actually comes across as a SharePoint link, not like a standard, I don't know, click here to view Teams file or something like that, if that makes sense.
Yes, and so we're, one of the next things we're going to cover is actually SharePoint and OneDrive, and that's one of the things that you can do is you can invite guests from outside of your organization to contribute to that. So, and so Teams, because it's all a platform, Microsoft 365, they're all integrated together. So as you're moving from one thing to the other, you're going to be able to integrate those. So the more you can utilize within the platform itself, the better off you're going to be as to better collaboration internally and externally. So that's a really good point, and that's not really happening too much nowadays, and it's going to be, and that's what we're going to talk about here when we're getting into the SharePoint. So if you want to hit up the SharePoint one.
And that is how the chat works, right?
Yes.
So that was, I had the luxury of being able to verbalize my chat, but if you do have a question, you can use the chat room and we will be interactive and live with you, and we have great advice.
So 2 more slides ahead. Next, there you go. So, and that's where it kind of segues into SharePoint and OneDrive. They're 2 completely different platforms, but as we were talking about earlier, they're all kind of integrated the same. And of course, this is only 1 hour. So, I could go spend 2 hours on just one of them, but we're not going to do that today. So SharePoint is more collaborative, and that's kind of one of the things that kind of brings it all together. So it encourages engagement, productivity, sharing news, data, files, and it all kind of feeds in from things like Team, OneDrive, but also SharePoint as a whole does that as well. So you can bring in multiple people. You can have an intranet site in which, instead of trying to send email blasts out that you know nobody will ever read, you can have an intranet site that people log into every morning, into which they get their files. They can see a calendar as to what they're supposed to do today. You can have a nice little thing that says, say, happy birthday to Ron. It's Ron's birthday today. And so the more you start utilizing that, the better you can drive people to that and get the collaboration piece out of it. So when you think SharePoint, that is kind of the glue that brings a lot of those together. The wonderful thing about SharePoint too is it can be on any device. So not just a PC, but your Mac, smartphones, iPhones, Chromebooks, whatever you want to do. It now makes it easier to do that. So when you're in the office, it's much easier to jump on your computer and there you go, you can access your data. But now when you're on the road, you're in an airport, you're just thinking of something, you're in a meeting, you don't have to go back and say, you know, what's that process again? Someone can hop on their phone, couple clicks, and all of a sudden, yeah, actually we do this. Technically, you could write a whole Word document, but I don't think you'd really want to do that on your phone, but actually is a capability you have. The fourth part is the streamlined processes, that really, again, the collaboration piece. Again, you can bring in other people from the outside. So you're not trying to email a document back and forth 20 times with maybe a client of yours that you have. They're making edits and you're making edits, and then, oops, we made edits in 2 different ones. Now we're in trouble. Now you can bring everybody into the same single SharePoint site that you can create custom for your client, let's say. You can both work on that document at the same time, no less. So you can see someone adding things into one area and somebody else adding into another. We do that a little bit internally when we have salespeople and engineers working on the same document, because either one can do one at the same time. So we do that. So there's a lot of streamlining in the SharePoint part of it.
The SharePoint, you're thinking, would be a better tool for what I just described?
It all kind of pieces together. So if you're interfacing in Teams all day long, it interfaces back with SharePoint. So you don't have to jump to SharePoint. And what he was showing is that you can be in Teams and be leveraging SharePoint. And that's really what it's doing in the back end. And same thing with OneDrive. It's kind of like a Dropbox type replacement a bit. Dropbox kind of sits in the middle there if you're familiar with that. But you can use OneDrive for PC backups. It's not administrative awesome. IT people have a hard time, measuring if the backups happen. But if you're just looking for a quick, cheap, easy, I want to back up my photos, it's a very easy way of doing that. The synchronization part with OneDrive as you're saving your data to OneDrive, and that's more of your individual stuff. You can share that out with other people. But again, if you're collaborating with data, that's really where SharePoint comes into play. But you can use OneDrive to store all of your data and synchronize that on your devices. So if you don't have an internet connection, you can still access that. You can use OneDrive to synchronize SharePoint. So if I have a SharePoint site that's set up for the sales, the sales site has all these documents in there, I can synchronize that through OneDrive, and then I can go wherever I want to in the world, continue working, get my internet connection back. It synchronizes all that stuff back up there. OneDrive, again, has the same cool feature of not needing a PC. Again, use the smartphones that we all have and carry with us every day. There isn't undue changes in versioning history, and you don't have to engage your IT company or IT person. If you make an oopsie, you can actually do that on your own. So you now give some of that power back to the users and have to wait for IT to take care of that for you. If I had big red flashing letters right now, I'd say, this is not a backup, and repeat that 7 times. This is not a substitute for a backup. This is the quick, I delete a file, I can recover it on my own. I saved on top of this document, I want the previous version. Within 10 seconds, you can do that on your own. So I want to make sure it doesn't have a built-in backup to it. Many of our clients that we service have an Office 365 backup. They're not very expensive. Because if you delete something in one of these platforms, after 30 days, it's gone. So it's very important to have that. And then, of course, ransomware attacks, it has some built-in protections. That is a security webinar. That is not this. Just letting you know there are protections. There's a lot of things you can do to lock that down to ensure that you're protecting your data, because that's extremely important nowadays. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because, again, this may not be something that's that applicable to what you're looking for. But if you start talking about people having servers internally, what's happening nowadays, and most of what we're seeing is a lot of clients are living in a hybrid. You know, they have Office 365, Microsoft 365, using email, maybe starting to use SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, but they still have a server for other aspects. One of the biggest drivers that's now making this more prevalent is cost. Before, cloud servers were way more expensive. You know, you take an average server, say it costs, you buy it, and then you take the cost of a cloud server over 5-6 years, and the on-premise was a lot cheaper. That's not so much now any day. So now the cost has been kind of removed from that as a big differentiator. So now we're having these conversations of, I need to replace my server. Do I need to have a physical box in here, and all the things that come along with that? So that's no longer so that's a big driver part of that. I always get asked the same question: is it more secure to be in the cloud versus on site? And you'll get 7 different opinions from 7 different IT people. In my opinion, it's not better or worse; it's just different. So as you start to go through, I want to move this data to the cloud, it makes it more accessible, but that also makes it less secure. So you have to put additional security measures in place. But when it's in the cloud, you know, they have a bunch of physical security measures that people can't just walk up to a server and steal data. That's half the battle. If I can get physical access to anything, I'm already halfway there. So now you've removed that because no one's going to put all these physical securities in place at your office. It's just not cost effective to do so. So there's a lot around that, putting servers in the cloud and how that works. Maybe you have some servers internally, some in the cloud. There's a lot of variations. There's a lot of things you can do. So as you're starting to look at replacing servers or how you're housing your data, this is a very viable option, and you definitely need to be at least looking at this to see if it's a good fit or not. And that's kind of how deep I'll get into that. If anybody has anything on the Q&A, we can definitely hit that up, but we won't at this time. This is another John Maxwell quote here, but this is one of my little tips here is, with a platform, with technology, it's only going to go as far as someone champions it. So you have to have somebody that you can lean on to understand what Microsoft 365 or cloud platforms can do for you. Sometimes it's somebody internally that just knows a little bit and they can understand the power of it. Sometimes you have an IT person or an IT company that can help you with this. It's really important to, as you start solving business, and this is what about business problems or opportunities. Right now we're in a recovery. So how do we, in the transition of moving back from working from home back in the business and how we can do this, how can we take advantage of this? So having people to understand that and be able to say, we can help with leveraging this piece of Microsoft 365 or Azure. And we were very Microsoft centric in this one. There are other platforms. There's Google platform. Amazon has their AWS, and it's all kind of the same-ish. We're a very Microsoft-centric focused company, so we understand it very well, so we're speaking intelligently about that. But however, there are other platforms out there, so if you're utilizing another platform, you still should be having the exact same conversations, even if you're not using Microsoft 365. But having somebody that knows and understands that is going to be critical as you're trying to grow your business, recover in this time. So that's kind of my little tip. You need a champion of some sorts. So that's kind of covering what we were talking about here and doing a high level view. And I know Kenny went more detailed in the teams, because I thought that was something that was very important, because most people don't understand what it actually even is. So showing the details of that I thought was very important. So I don't know what questions that we've had thus far or not, but we can start on that. So
we'll give it a minute for the chat room to populate on. I'm not seeing anything popping up there yet, right? Okay. So with Teams, so you've got SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive.
Yeah.
Right. So OneDrive is syncing your computer, but OneDrive you're saying server. So
yeah. So
there's some blur in there of what does what, but OneDrive is really doing the syncing for the computer. SharePoint then
One of the benefits of Microsoft 365 platform is that it can do so many things, but that's also one of its kind of downfalls too, is you can't talk about one without talking about the other. So you're really not going to implement just SharePoint. You're not going to implement just OneDrive. If you have a file server or you have a bunch of data and you're saying, how can I take advantage of the cloud so I can be not just remote, but be more collaborative when people are traveling and just basically get this data out of the office, because when there's a hurricane or something, a power outage, how do we take advantage of that? That's you're really kind of talking about this. So if you're talking about a file server replacement, I have a file server and I want to get rid of it. A lot of the times that data is going into SharePoint and it's going into OneDrive. And so when we sit down with the business owner or the person in charge of that champion, it's saying they know the most about the data and really the business process. So as you're stepping through your business, like how is this data accessed? Mm-hmm. Who needs to access it? What needs to be collaborative? What's more individual to one person? You kind of do an evaluation on all that data and you say, where does this best fit? And then, so instead of just taking all this and copying and pasting it somewhere, you're really being intentional. It's one of my favorite words, by intentional. I love that. You're being intentional about how you're designing this, because you want to make sure that IT is supporting the business. IT is there to do nothing more than support business and business process. So either IT, you're kind of working against it or you're leveraging it. And that's really where it comes down to having a champion that understands these platforms and saying, yes, you can do this, but there's 3 ways of doing this. And let me ask some questions to better understand what you do. And I can pick one of the best 3 for you and say, I think you should do it this way. So the platform is extremely flexible, which makes it hard to say, you're just going to do this. So it's its own worst enemy sometimes of everyone.
And know what you can do in this kind of environment, right? Yes. So you're wanting to use this new tool in the best way possible. So I do see some questions populating up there. I can't really read them from here though. Brian, are you mic'd up?
I can facilitate. I'm not
excellent.
Mic'd, but they can certainly hear me. The first is a comment. They just wanted to thank you guys for putting it on. You know, she's been using SharePoint and OneDrive, but they've been curious about Teams. So she wanted to thank you for the information on that. That was Donna. And then 2 quick questions. One is from Barbara here. Is what steps need to happen when going from a server to the cloud? Is Microsoft Azure the only cloud company out there?
Yeah, so there's 2 questions in there. So thank you, Barbara. It's good to see you virtually. So when you're looking at moving to the cloud, a server, you're looking at how, what that server or servers are doing, because that may not all live in the Microsoft 365 environment. There might be other platforms as well. And again, we were just talking about Microsoft here mostly, but there actually might be different platforms. So the first step in doing that is understanding what you have. And sometimes that can be the hardest part, is doing a discovery and saying, what is that magical box in the corner actually doing for the business? So really doing a discovery and understanding what's there, why it's there, and how the different people in the organization are utilizing that data, and how and the why is the most important part. Because as you're looking at data, whether it goes to SharePoint or it goes to OneDrive, or maybe neither one of them the best, and maybe a Dropbox solution or something actually is a better fit. It's really about the why and the business process around that, and the security and the collaboration you may need. So those are the questions that you really need to be asking, because that will drive the solution. Otherwise, it becomes square peg, round hole. I can take, OneDrive, SharePoint, and I can make it work, but it may not be what's best for you. And in terms of, is Microsoft Azure the only cloud platform? Absolutely not. A lot of them are, there's a lot of them out there. The biggest one, I don't know if they're still the biggest or not, but Amazon, AWS, they're the gorilla in the room. Everybody knows them. Microsoft is really gaining a lot of traction as well. Google has their own. There's Rackspace, there's OC33, and then there's a lot of companies, even just locally, that provide cloud servers at some capacity. You're starting to see a lot of local companies not do it anymore, because Microsoft, Amazon, their pricing was up here, and then local companies could offer it down here. Microsoft and Amazon really have lowered their pricing. So now that's not something that they can really compete. If you're looking at something that is just local to one tiny area, or it can be spread across 9 different data centers just in the United States, it's going to be very tough to compete. So a lot of the local companies that are providing, and we do not, by the way, but there's other companies that do have data centers and colo and all that. They're usually offering something that a pure cloud solution cannot. You may need to have special hardware, a private cloud. So the ones that are not only surviving but thriving have found a niche of some kind that you can't make it fit into an Azure or a Amazon type of platform.
You talk about taking inventory, right? So many people have Microsoft 365. They're probably not even fully utilizing that. And then we're talking about these others. So you have SharePoint is an add-on to, and it was a pretty affordable add-on. OneDrive, what do we have? What do we need to add? What are we considering there?
So a lot of people, Microsoft really just kind of throws it all in there. So assuming that you have the normal business premium or type of subscription, you already have SharePoint, OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, and there's Intune. There's just like 100 other things in there that we didn't even dive into because those are really technical, by the way. They're already there, so you just have to take advantage of them. Yeah. So Azure that's when you're buying a server. That's completely separate. But with Microsoft 365 and Azure, there's a lot of integrations that you only get when you do Azure. But you can have Microsoft 365 and you can buy Amazon instances. You lose some of the integrations, but you may not need it. And the Amazon platform might have better capabilities. So a lot of times, most businesses and organizations we walk into already have SharePoint. It's already there, and they're just not utilizing it. Sure. So we start talking to them about that and saying, how can you actually utilize this? Maybe they don't need it.
And Microsoft's putting Teams on everybody's computers now. So everybody has Teams on their computers. Start using it. You really don't need to, it doesn't seem like you need to fully embrace it even, right? You can use it, not use it. You can still use your old Microsoft apps as you like, and then increase and figure out how your flexibility within Teams.
Absolutely. Accurate? And so let's say you have a file sitting out. You have a sales SharePoint site, and you have 20 files in there. The thing is, it doesn't limit you. So you can access and use that data in Teams. You can use OneDrive to access that data sitting in SharePoint. Or you can go right to SharePoint. So it's almost, that's where you said it blurs so easily. So you can almost make it extremely flexible as to what's best for your business process. If you're living in Teams, you're chatting all day long, then most people are going to naturally stay in the Teams environment and access SharePoint. So it really depends on your business process and what are you doing on a daily basis is really going to drive. The data itself is what road do you need to best take to get there?
And people within different roles in the same business, maybe using Teams differently, other apps.
Absolutely.
Very, very flexible. I see some more questions I can't read up there. Brian, how are we doing?
So we had a question. Also, somebody said they couldn't hear me, so I'm going to be louder.
Okay, and I can repeat.
Comfortably loud for you, but they'll be a little bit. So the St. Lucie County School Board is using Teams a lot. And this person is saying that she considered using Teams to do read-alongs with children over the summer, but the Zoom platform seems to work better. So, or easier. So what do you recommend on that with regard to Teams and Zoom?
So in terms of, what were we all, when this pandemic happened is how do we do video conferencing? And so Zoom is, that's what it does. That's the reason that it really exists, to be honest with you. Teams they're catching up. And so a lot of the features, Zoom, we're using Zoom as an example over here. Teams has had to kind of do a little bit of catch up. They had a limit of 4. You can only have 4 people videoing at the same time. They keep increasing that. So what Microsoft has been doing is saying, we're not quite there. So before Zoom and Teams, people really didn't have that discussion. Now what Microsoft is doing is they're really boosting what Teams is doing in order to compete with someone like Zoom that's been doing it, and especially for this. So they're adding a lot more into there. They're trying to make it more of a competitor to somebody like Zoom. So you're starting to see, instead of this disparity, you're seeing it kind of more like this. So if you have real video conferencing needs where you're going to have 200-300 people, Teams is probably not going to be your solution for it. But if you're just looking for a couple people to share a screen and do a quick video conferencing, and you have Teams already built in, that's what businesses and organizations are going to do. They're saying, well, I already have Teams open, so I'm going to click the little button that says share screen, and now all of a sudden I don't have to be next to that person. They can see what's on my screen. I can tell them they misspelled that word or whatever the case may be, and be able to help them with that. So they're not really, they've only recently really become competitors, if that makes sense.
Mike, do you mind if I jump in briefly here? Something a lot of our customers over at Pax8 have found as well about Zoom versus Teams. So Mike, you pretty much hit the nail on the head as far as limitations. And, you know, Zoom is a meetings platform first, right? They do awesome with that. That is their bread and butter. So when you hear people say, man, I don't know if it's quite as good as Teams, just like Mike was saying, yes, it's because that's how they designed their product however many years ago it was, versus Microsoft having to design every other product they design in addition to Teams, right? So yes, there is this catch up and moving, but if you don't have these huge requirements, you know, 200 users in a meeting, 300 users in a meeting, there is some screen sharing limitations. For instance, Teams, you can only see 4 people's screen at one time, stuff like that, right? Of course, there's always a little trouble of trying to retrain your end users to move to another product. That's always going to be a little bit of a hiccup, right? But long story short, when Teams is included in your Microsoft licenses, there can be a serious cost savings to your company if you realize you don't have those large essentially quantity necessities for meetings. And just like Mike was saying, you're just having small internal meetings, or, you know what, out of your 50 users, for example, only 10 consistently host meetings. So you can just assign them a quick Microsoft audio conferencing license, which is $4 instead of that Zoom $14.99 license. And then, yes, you might not have a 100% apples to apples. Everyone is at 100% psyched and love it, but it is $11 cheaper a month, right? So there is a finances game here. Both are great products. Both totally have their advantages and disadvantages. But that is, you know, at the end of the day, if money's coming down to it, think about it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think VBRC, we've had the same kind of experience, right? So it's, you know, we've looked at all three, and we're using all three. So Teams is, I think the functionality isn't quite there yet. GoToMeeting is good for GoToMeetings, and sometimes if we're hosting something we have a webinar going already on Zoom, then we're able to switch over to GoToMeeting. There's just different applications, different tools.
Yeah, and that's why I say, you know, Barbara had that question earlier about, you know, how do you move from, a servers to the cloud? It's more about understanding what you're trying to do and then having the technology back what you're trying to do. That's where the power is.
Any other questions up there, Brian? We're all set. Good, excellent. Anything more from you guys you'd like to add? Again, thank you very much to 8th Avenue Studios. This is a wonderful production facility here. Thank you, Pax8, Kenny. Great to have you on. Capstone IT, wonderful information today. I think very, very relevant. Everybody is doing the remote work. How do you do it safely, securely, and effectively, right? So. Yeah,
and if you're, in terms of, we did a HighLevel View, and if you're looking for someone to come in and do that analysis, we'll come in for free and take a look and say, hey, that's something that we're doing because this is kind of weird times, and so we're offering that for free too. So if you want someone to come in, we're not charging for it at all. Partnering with Bill here is to help with that. So to lead you down the path. Sometimes if you have an IT person or IT, sometimes just a sanity check. IT is a very big part of most businesses and organizations. So sometimes you're like, am I getting the right advice? And, we say the same thing that your IT person's saying. You're like, oh, well, that's fantastic. Now I know it's really happening. So, or I know that it's good advice. So we do that. And of course, if you have any questions, you can reach out and we'll be happy to help with that as well.
Thank you, Michael. So I'm going to cheat and look behind me for a phone number here in a second, but we do very much encourage you, the Small Business Development Center, the Florida Small Business Development Center at IRSC is here to help you. There is no cost counseling available for you, for your business. We do have additional experts, IT and production and marketing and bankers, you name it. We have it kind of across the board that we can help and are here to assist you transform your business, get you back out there, get you making money again and growing your business. So the phone number for my cheat, 772-336-6285 is the Small Business Development Center's phone number. Again, free counseling available there. IRSCbiz.com. Also, there are you can sign up for the newsletters. You can access counseling. There's a request for consulting link there that you can request consulting online as well. So, again, thank you very much. Do we have one final chat thing to squeeze in? We're good? All right. Excellent. Again, thank you very much. Visit youredc.com/VBRC for a recording of this webinar, previous webinars, and to also look at what's coming up next week.
Perfect.
Excellent. Yes. Very good.